This is driven by the activity of countless latent tendencies, or mood patterns, and also a variety of other closely related factors. Sutras 22 and 23 were about how the one awareness enters into cognition. The reality of cognition, the reality by which we believe ourselves to be an individual perceiving an external world, that reality is underpinned by awareness. Enlightenment practice is about coming back to that essential, pure awareness. But during the course of the day, we have to enter into cognition quite a lot. This is the nature of how things are. Enlightenment practice is about understanding that. It's about taking the attention where it needs to go, and then at every opportunity bringing it back to rest in itself, rather than having it being driven all over the place, which is the normal state of affairs. Our ordinary reality is driven by the activity of countless latent tendencies. These are our basic moods, our basic drives. I don't mean the natural drives like the need for shelter and hunger. There's nothing wrong with them at all in their most essential form. It's our psychological, our emotional and mental response to these which is the problem. So this is what we have to deal with. We have to deal with this great flow of our moods, of our habit patterns, of our psychological reactions to how we perceive things. And some of these other closely related factors have been dealt with in the previous book. In book 1, we heard about the vrittis. These are the perturbations of the mind-heart. They're stirred up by this whole process of cognition, which is fundamentally underpinned by memory. What's the connection between memory and mood? That's possibly worth pursuing. But not right now. The other factor we can consider is what's called the poisons, or the afflictions. These were covered in book 2. So these are some of the other related factors. One of these afflictions is this sense of separate selfhood. Our moods reinforce this. And this is what underpins the cognitive reality that we subscribe to. The one who can distinguish this stops reinforcing a sense of separate identity. So once you can distinguish, once you can discern that your everyday reality is a procession of moods, then you stop fueling these moods. You become more and more a witness to these moods. And in this way you stop fueling a sense of separate identity. One of the things about a mood is it feels very justified. It feels quite righteous. A mood or mindset very rarely regards itself as wrong. Another mood or mindset might regard it in retrospect as wrong, but at the time it feels right. People that are perpetrating the most awful deeds, even murder or paedophiles, actually feel okay about it at the time, otherwise they wouldn't do it. In retrospect they might still feel okay about it, or they might feel at some level that it wasn't right what they did. But this is the thing about mindsets, about moods. They tend to be self-justifying. So if you are trying to change your behaviour, it's worth looking out for that. Even if you're on a diet, or you're trying to give up smoking, the challenge comes when you feel, well, it's actually okay to indulge. You've been quite good so far, and that cream cake is just waiting to be eaten. Or what harm's another cigarette going to do? You haven't had one all day, you've been doing pretty well. A lot of sexual crimes against women are often justified even by the system. She deserved what she got. The most evil behaviour is actually carried out by those who regard themselves as the most self-righteous. But this is quite fundamental. This is how our moods work. This is how we justify indulging them. And this is the importance of the first limb of yoga. This is the challenge of the first limb. Not to indulge our righteousness. Perhaps this is the understanding of the statement of Jesus about not resisting evil. Perhaps what he meant was, don't indulge your self-righteousness, because all you're doing is reinforcing your sense of separate identity. You're telling yourself, and possibly the world, that you're actually quite a decent person. We look at this procession of moods. We see what drives them on, what fuels them, what propels them, what reinforces them. We look at the investment we put into them, the belief that our mood is who we are. We look at all that. We discern all that. We develop dispassion towards our moods. And such discrimination moves the centre of gravity towards Kaivalya. So rather than having this urge to indulge our moods, we start having the urge to not indulge them, to not scratch the itchy spot. We leave them alone, and in doing so, we move into pure aloneness. This is Kaivalya. This is dispassion. I said a couple of videos ago about how often the supreme realization is described in not very appealing terms. The importance of this is it doesn't appeal to the moods, to our moods. And Kaivalya is another term. It means aloneness. It's not particularly inspiring, is it? And it's not meant to be. It gives us an indication of how we are, of how the liberated one is in relation to not only the procession of moods, but all of the reality which is characterized by the cognitive process. It characterizes the relationship of the enlightenment practitioner to consensus reality. And as much as they might be engaging with it, they are essentially aloof from it. This is the nature of Kaivalya, of liberation.